Our second speaker of the morning is Aidan Horn, and Aidan is speaking out of the manual Speaking to Inform. He's speaking on the second assignment, which is Resources for Informing. And Aidan's evaluator is Chris Adlan. Chris, can you give a brief overview of his objectives for the morning?
The objective is to analyze these elements regarding your chosen subject, focus your presentation on at the audience's level of knowledge, build a supporting case for each major point using information gathered through your research, effectively use one visual aid to enhance your audience's understanding. Time 5 to 7 minutes.
Thank you. Aidan's title is How Strong Are Foreign Currencies? Aidan. Thank you.
My cousin called me last Thursday from Britain, where she lives. Hello? What's the matter? What? Are you telling me that you're on a train and you put your feet up on the seat in front of you, and an officer came by and charged you £50? That's so much. That's like, how much is it? The exchange rate's about 18 rand to £1. That would make it about 900 rand. That's like 900 rand. But is it? And that's the question I want to answer in my speech. I want to talk to you about how expensive it is to buy things overseas. I'll use Britain as an example. I'm sure a lot of you have been there and you've bought things there, so you're familiar with the exchange rates. If I told you that the exchange rate is 18 rand to £1, does it mean that Brits can buy 18 times more things when they come to South Africa? Or does it mean that South Africans can buy 18 times fewer things when they go to Britain? It doesn't seem likely. Let's take a few examples. A Coca-Cola costs 10 rand in a supermarket in South Africa. I got that information from an online shopping website. But the same product costs £1.25 in Britain, which is about 22 rand, again from an online shopping website in Britain. If it were 18 times more expensive, you'll be paying 180 rand for this little bottle of Coke. That's clearly not the case. Another example, what The Economist likes to use, is the Big Mac. It costs 30 rand in South Africa and £3 in Britain, which is the equivalent of 53 rand. Clearly not 18 times more expensive. So while products aren't 18 times more expensive in Britain, they also aren't the same price, the equivalent of the same price. And we all know that it's expensive to go on holiday in Britain, but exactly how expensive is it? It must be a factor between 1 and 18. And it turns out that it's about 2.25. It's 2.25 times more expensive to buy a product in Britain than it is to buy the same product in South Africa. I got this information from the World Bank website, looking at the data set on purchasing power parity conversion factors. And this basically means that I needed to find out how many rands was the equivalent, could buy you the same amount of stuff in South Africa as £1 could buy you in Britain. And it turns out that 8 rand buys you the same amount in South Africa as £1 does in Britain. So if I buy a chocolate worth 8 rand here in South Africa and I earn my salary in rands, I would get the same goodness of chocolate than if I lived in Britain, earned a salary in pounds and bought a chocolate for £1. But the exchange rate isn't 18 rand to 1, it isn't 8 rand to 1 pound, it's 18 rand to 1 pound. So things are more expensive for us. When we go to the travel bureau, we don't give 8 rand for every pound, we give a whole lot more money. Suddenly we're giving all this money just to get some pounds, so it's more expensive for us. And how much more expensive? 2.25. So the pound is stronger. by 2.25 times. Let me use some examples. This tells us that the prices of different products should be different in different countries. So for example, I once bought an online service which would let me get support remotely if my computer broke, but I paid a South African price, and it was much cheaper than I would have paid if I paid the American price. We all know that Toastmasters fees, on the other hand, are $7.50 across the world, and this means that Americans effectively find their Toastmasters fees 3 times cheaper than we find ours. And that might be a reason why Toastmasters is much more popular in America. So we can go back to the example of my cousin. She paid a fine of £50, which on the exchange rate is 900 Rand. But if I use this purchasing power conversion, then I would times it by 8 to get 400 Rand. And this would give me a real understanding of how much of her salary she's actually giving up. If I really wanted to understand what situation she was in. So if I was on a train in South Africa, I put my feet up, and the fines were the same sort of level, it would be more like 400 Rand. And that's what I would be paying. You might be wondering why the exchange rate is so different to this purchasing power conversion of 8 Rand to £1. And it's because of global trade. In South Africa, we don't trade a lot of our economy. A lot of our goods are produced and consumed domestically, which impacts on inflation and income. But only goods that are traded in the global market actually affect exchange rates. And if we import more than we export, the rand becomes weaker. And so it becomes more expensive for us to go on holiday. So I think this way of thinking about exchange rates is much more informative than just looking at the nominal exchange rate. It tells you how much purchasing power your rands have and how to think about how to convert what other people spend, depending on what prices there are in the different countries. It's important to not rely solely on the exchange rate to determine the relative strength of currencies because of these different prices in different countries. So at the end of the day, my cousin only paid about 400 Rand, but it's still a lot of money. And I'm sure Metro Rail would have made a lot of money if they charged this amount in South Africa.
Thank you very much, Aidan. That's very informative.